From the very first, I loved the cottage. This was the one I wanted. And I ignored all suggestions that I might feel lonely here with Andrew away at sea 1 month out of every 2. The whitewashed walls, the quaint windows, and the thatched roof were so different from the semi-detached we'd left behind in London. We were in the middle of the countryside, and the Atlantic was less than a mile away. I knew I'd be isolated here, but not lonely. And of course I'd have Kelly, our daughter, and Andy, the cross-eyed pregnant collie that Andrew had bought for me, to protect me, he said.
What is it? For bunnies. Found any worms yet?
How good those first days were. I left the car in the garage and made up my mind to become a walker again. Most mornings we went to the village. I'd expected the villagers to treat us with reserve. We were foreigners from London, after all. But Kelly soon broke down any barriers.
Bye then. Bye. Where's Teddy? Teddy gonna have one? You're gonna keep them all to yourself.
In the afternoons we explored, making the most of the fine autumn weather. The woodland paths smelt fresh and clean. Kelly called them green tunnels. She saw her first seagull. And like me, she loved the sea and the empty beaches. In the evenings, I would light a fire in my small sitting room, and with Kelly asleep upstairs and the dog in her place on the hearthrug, I would write to Andrew, a daily chronicle of small events. Writing to him was so easy then. Peaceful, ordinary days. But without adult company, my life was beginning to shrink to the scope and focus of a 3-year-old. Eventually, I asked a neighbour, Mrs. Kimms, if she would do a bit of cleaning and babysitting for me. She and Kelly quickly took to each other, and that gave me some time of my own.
Come in here.
There's Mummy.
One day, picking my way along a cliff top, I noticed a track, half overgrown with grass, a narrow path, but definitely a path.
Come on, Andy. Come on. Come on, you silly dog. Come on in. Ah, he's a good girl.
I followed its gradual descent, Andy bounding ahead, excited by the country smells. In the distance I could hear the waves breaking on the shore. Then, as I rounded a bend, I found myself at the entrance to a hidden cove. The rocky cliffs, rearing up on each side, seemed to cut it off from the rest of the world. The waves made lace ruffles along the edge of a beach, peppered with large stones. Thankful for my newfound freedom, I reached the beach and revelled in the solitude of it all. I felt a child's delight in seeing my shadow stretching ahead of me, knife sharp against the yellow sand as I followed Andy to the edge of the sea. The exhilaration was intoxicating. I was bursting with energy. I started to climb the rocks, making my way towards a ledge I'd spotted. When I got there, I was quite breathless. I couldn't wait to bring Andrew here. I could just see him climbing up to the ledge with Kelly on his shoulders. I sat there, happily absorbed in my thoughts as I watched the sea gently breaking on the rocks below me, and occasionally the sun formed a rainbow in the spray. I lost all count of time. Then, although the sun still shone, I began to feel quite chilly. I found myself thinking longingly of home. Carefully, I made my way down to the beach again. Then above the wind, I thought I heard something. It seemed to come from the cliff face, but there was no sign of anything. Puzzled, I called Andy to me and moved on, but hadn't gone far before I heard it again. This time, unmistakably, a cry. I was scared, and half walking, half running, made my way back to the path. It must have been a gull, I told myself. Gulls can sound extraordinarily human sometimes. But I was fighting panic every step of the way. It was a relief to reach the road again, to be back in the world of people and familiar places. By the time I got home, I was almost ready to laugh at my stupidity. As soon as I walked in, I smelt the cigarette smoke. Then I saw a carpetbag on the floor, and knew with a sinking heart that Fran had come. I hoped I'd never see her again. We'd parted on bad terms, but Fran always turns up. She was in the garden with Kelly, and there was no sign of Mrs. Kimms. I assumed that Fran had sent her home. Steeling myself to seem welcoming, I went out to join them. I always resented the way my daughter abandons me as soon as Fran appears. Fran cares nothing for children. She's told me so. But she has quite a way with them when she sets out to please, and she was certainly sparing no pains to please Kelly. Later, she told me she'd just come back from wandering around India and thought she would come and see how I was making out in Cornwall. I realized that I knew very little about Fran, though my life is an open book to her. She seemed amused at the idea of my living here, but she made herself immediately at home.
Hi, darling. Yeah.
she had already settled into my chair. Her presence, although she had drifted into one of her deep, silent moods, changed the normally happy atmosphere of the room.
Is it nice to be back?
I offered tea and conventional conversation, but then I'm a conventional person. Her reticence had made me chatter on, but eventually I gave up the struggle. All the time I was wondering, why had she come? What did she want? The dog obviously distrusted her. Fran has no real place in my life. I met her first at a party in London. She introduced herself as a friend's cousin or a cousin's friend, some such tenuous connection. After our first meeting, she was always dropping in. I hoped that after my marriage, the visits would stop, but Fran continued to drop in. Andrew didn't seem to mind. He said she was interesting. He used to tease me about her, but I knew she wasn't his type. It was obvious that she intended to stay for a while. She'd made my pretty spare room her own. It was filled with her clutter, including strange clothing and bits and pieces she'd brought back from India. Nothing gave a clue to her real background. She remained remote and secret. In my house, but not of it. I've never known anybody who felt really comfortable with Fran. There's something alien about her. I disliked her, yet, as always, I couldn't bring myself to ask how long she was staying. So the days went by. The rhythms of her life were quite different from mine. She would still be asleep when we went to the village in the mornings. Most of the time, she'd wander off on her own. I never asked where. Some nights, long after I'd gone to bed, the melancholy sound of her guitar would keep me awake. Often I'd want to get up and tell her to stop, but something more than laziness kept me back. One day, I came back from the village to find Andrew's photograph smashed on the floor. It must have been the wind, Fran had suggested. But the windows were all shut. More than ever, I wanted to be rid of her. Then, at last, a letter arrived from Andrew. As I took it to my favourite seat in the garden, I felt light-hearted for the first time in days. Andrew has a wonderful sense of humour. His letters always make me laugh. Then he told me, and I found myself trying to keep back the tears. His leave had been postponed. We would now have to wait 7 weeks to see each other. I felt desolate and very alone. From the corner of my eye, I noticed a movement in an upstairs window. I looked up to see Fran moving away. From her expression, I was sure that my news was already known to her. Disturbed and depressed, I decided to prepare a picnic tea for Kelly and myself and get away from the cottage. Then Fran said she would come with us. I felt bitterly resentful of her intrusion, but powerless to do anything about it. She led the way, with us, but always remote, unaware. We came to the beginning of the path to my secret cove. Fran said she was sure she'd been there before. I didn't want to go there again, especially with her. The path was too steep, I told her, but Fran took no notice. Kelly was crying. She wanted to walk with Fran. I pulled her out of her pushchair and let them go ahead. My jealousy had become an obsession. I recognized that. But I couldn't control it. I had to constantly suppress an overwhelming feeling that Fran was trying to take over my child. I felt unwanted and very alone. Fran went ahead without so much as a glance over her shoulder. I dropped further and further behind, hampered as I was with pushchair, picnic and the teddy. I tried, but I couldn't keep up. When I looked down to the beach, there was Kelly running around a rock pool. At first I didn't see Fran. Then I spotted her, standing motionless, looking out to sea. How dared she leave my daughter alone? Aware of danger, I left the pushchair and hurried the rest of the way to the beach. All this time, Fran stood staring out at the ocean. How sad she looked. Despite everything, I wanted to go to her to help. But I knew she wouldn't let me. So, instead, I took Kelly down to the sea and we played together. It was fun. And I'm ashamed to admit I almost forgot about Fran. When we joined her again, she was holding a piece of driftwood in her hands. It might have come from a wreck, she told us. This part of the coast was famous for shipwrecks. The desolate cries of seagulls filled the uncomfortable silence between us. Then Fran said that there's a legend that seagulls are the souls of dead children. Children. I remembered the strange cries I'd heard and felt a chill run down my spine. I knew she was trying to frighten me, but I was determined not to show it. Then, without another word, she marched off across the beach. It frustrated me to see that Kelly was in her arms again. The mood of the beach had quite changed, and I was possessed by the most primitive of emotions. fear and anger. Now I was ready to tell Fran to clear out of our lives. But while she held Kelly, I dared not speak. I wanted desperately to hit her with that plank, but I knew I wouldn't. Fran continued her efforts to unnerve me as we struggled back to the cliff top. She insisted on telling me a story about the cove. According to her, more than 100 years ago, a packet boat bound for America had gone adrift in fog one October evening and was wrecked on the rocks. Among the people struggling in the water was a young woman who managed to reach the shore with her child in her arms. She had just set the child down on a ledge of rock when a strong wave swept her off her feet and she was drawn back into the sea. She was rescued and brought ashore, unconscious. But no one heard the little girl crying in the darkness. And the waves washed her from the ledge. I was thankful to reach the cliff top. I felt safer there. But Fran still held Kelly. She made no pretense now of friendliness as I pulled Kelly away and dropped her in her pushchair. Inside, I was shaking. Outwardly, I tried to put on a brave front. Fran said nothing. She sat beside us, looking at Kelly with an expression which was hard to describe, but which chilled me. It seemed that what was between us must explode.
My child.
Her child? What did you mean? Horrifying possibilities crowded into my mind. I wanted her to stay, to explain. I called, but the words stuck in my throat. She walked onto the edge of the cliff and down the path out of sight. I rushed after her, but she was nowhere to be seen. Into empty space, I screamed out all my hatred.
You bitch! I hate you!
Then I saw her at the water's edge. How could she have got there in so short a time? For a moment, tears of rage filled my eyes, but when I could see clearly again, she'd gone. There was nowhere for her to go. But she had gone. Confused, dazed, I turned away, then stared, unable to believe my eyes. Kelly's teddy bear was rolling towards the cliff edge as though blown by the wind. But as it dropped over the edge, I suddenly realized there was no wind. Panic began to take control. My limbs seized, my throat constricted. Horrified, I watched as Kelly clambered out of her pushchair. She wasn't looking at me. She was smiling as though someone she knew was calling her. Then she began to run. I don't know how I got to her, but I thanked God as I clung to her. My knees felt as if they must give way as I tried to get to the pushchair. But as I reached for it, it pulled away from me. For one frozen moment, I stood, watching after it. I knew we must get away from this place. I began to run as though all the powers of darkness were behind me. I knew in my heart that Kelly had been meant to fall. As I went, running and stumbling along the road, I had only one goal in life: to be home. Home was safety. At last, the familiar shape of the cottage was in sight. I leaned against the door. We were safe. Then I heard Kelly call, "Teddy." I thought I must be going out of my mind. It was there. The teddy and the pushchair were there. Andrew's photograph was there. Whole again. Then I knew. My eyes were drawn to the mirror. To her. No sound. Then slowly she faded away. We're on our own now. But fear has moved in with me. And the night is still to come.
Next week's West Country Tale is of a strange beast and the terror it causes. That's next Friday evening at 10:15.